A billionaire is moments away from proposing to his supermodel fiancée. But everything changes in an instant when he spots his first love, now with 3 children in tow. Before we get started, please write. Where are you watching this video from? The champagne glasses shimmered under the chandeliers. 1,000 cameras flashed like a thunderstorm trapped indoors. Laughter echoed off the marble walls, too loud, too polished, too fake. Everything about tonight was perfect. And yet, James Whitmore, billionaire, media darling and tonight's would-be fiancé, felt the knot in his stomach tighten with every passing second. He stood near the grand staircase, the ring box heavy in his pocket. The diamond inside, custom designed and so large it could have been seen from space, was supposed to represent the crowning moment of his carefully curated life. The woman he was about to propose to, Celeste Monroe, the world's most photographed supermodel, was at the center of the room, dazzling in a silver gown that seemed stitched from moonlight itself. She was everything society told him he should want. She was beautiful. She was admired. She was untouchable. And yet, somehow, standing there amid the gold and the glitter, James felt something rotten under the surface. He shifted uncomfortably, loosening the custom-tailored suit around his throat. The speeches were beginning. The crowd knew it was coming. He was moments away from kneeling on the velvet carpet, offering Celeste not just a ring but a kingdom, yachts, penthouses, private islands, all tied up in a bloodless, corporate kind of love. A waiter passed by with a tray of crystal flutes. James took one, hoping the cold wine would numb the strange unease prickling at the back of his neck. It didn't. He forced a smile. He thought about the headlines that would flood tomorrow's papers. Whitmore to wed Monroe, a modern fairy tale. It should have thrilled him. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down, realizing too late that the parachute had a hole in it. Someone clapped him on the back. A senator, a man who smelled of money and desperation, and James almost dropped his glass. Tonight's the night, huh? Lock it down, son. Women like that don't wait around forever. The man chuckled and moved on. James stayed frozen. The crowd swirled around him like a golden hurricane, and all he could do was clutch the tiny box in his pocket like a lifeline. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "This isn't right. This isn't real." He ignored it. He had spent his whole life ignoring inconvenient truths. Tonight would be no different. The orchestra swelled. Celeste turned her head toward him, her megawatt smile flickering like a neon sign. Everything slowed down. This was the moment he was supposed to step forward. This was the moment he was supposed to make her his future. Instead, for a single, unbearable second, he hesitated. And in that hesitation, fate slipped through the grand doors behind him, bringing with it a ghost from a past he thought was long dead. James had rehearsed this night 1,000 times in his mind. But nothing could have prepared him for the reality standing just 20 feet away. She stepped through the gilded doors as if she didn't belong there, and honestly she didn't. No designer dress, no diamonds, no desperate hunger for attention. Just a simple navy dress, worn flats, and the kind of beauty that didn't scream, it whispered. Real. Untouched by the glittering rot around them. James's breath caught somewhere between his chest and his throat. And the room blurred at the edges. The orchestra faded into a hollow buzz. The 100 fake smiles turned into a meaningless smear of color. All he could see was her. And the 3 small figures clinging to her hands. He watched, frozen, as one of the little boys tugged at her dress, looking up with adoration. "Mama, look," he chirped, pointing toward the grand chandelier. Anna smiled. That same smile James remembered, the one that had once made him believe anything was possible. Mama. The word hit him like a punch to the gut. 3 children. Calling her mama. His mind reeled. Had she married? Had she moved on, really moved on? He had told himself for years that she might still be out there waiting. That maybe someday life would circle back. But life hadn't waited. It had marched forward without him, and it had given her a life he wasn't part of. 1,000 memories slammed into him without mercy. The nights lying under the stars, dreaming about futures they were too young to understand. The promises made with trembling hands and reckless hearts. The kiss goodbye when he left for a future she wasn't ready for, and he thought he'd find his way back to her when the time was right. But the time was never right. And now here she was, flesh and blood and heartbreak, carrying a life he had no place in. The ring box in his pocket suddenly felt like a lead weight. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Celeste's voice, bright and perfect and wrong, floated toward him from the other side of the room. "James?" she called sweetly, noticing his hesitation. The crowd turned, sensing the shift, the ripple in the air. The spotlight, real and metaphorical, waited for him to step into it. But James didn't move toward Celeste. He didn't even glance her way. His world had narrowed to Anna. To the children whose existence shattered every plan he thought he wanted. To the undeniable truth that he had been lying to himself for years. The applause faded into an uncomfortable murmur. The orchestra stumbled to a stop. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. And in the deafening silence, James realized. He couldn't propose. Not now. Not ever. Because his heart had just walked through those doors. And it was no longer up for sale. For a long moment, James simply stared, lost in the undertow of memories he had spent half a lifetime trying to drown. Those eyes. God, those eyes. The same soft hazel that had haunted his dreams, that had smiled at him across countless stolen moments, that had looked at him once as if he were the only thing in the world that mattered. He remembered everything now. Too much. Too fast. Anna had been his first everything. First kiss, first dream, first real taste of the kind of love you don't get twice in a lifetime. They were just kids back then. Reckless. They thought that love could outrun everything. The distance, the doubts, even his disapproving parents. Especially his parents. James clenched his fists at his sides, feeling the old bitterness surge up like bile. His mother and father had looked at Anna and seen nothing but a threat. A girl from the wrong side of town, with no pedigree, no connections, no future. They had torn them apart with cold efficiency. One carefully orchestrated scholarship offer. One long-distance college acceptance. One endless string of "she's not right for you, James. You deserve better." Until he was too far away, too busy, too lost in building the empire they wanted him to inherit. He had told himself she would wait. He had believed it like a fool. But months turned into years and letters went unanswered. Eventually, he convinced himself that maybe she hadn't loved him the way he had loved her. Maybe it was easier that way. Easier to pretend it had all been some youthful dream that wasn't meant to survive the real world. And now, here she was. Not a dream. Not a ghost. Real. But those 3 children. They clung to her hands, looking up at her with a trust and adoration that twisted something sharp in his chest. Were they hers? Were they hers and someone else's? Had she found someone better, someone who gave her the life James had been too weak to fight for? 1,000 questions burned behind his eyes. Did she ever think of him? Did she hate him? Had she forgotten him altogether? The urge to cross the room, to shove through the glittering crowd and just ask, pulsed through him with almost unbearable force. His foot shifted forward. And then froze. What was he doing? What was he hoping for? This wasn't the innocent girl who used to leave wildflowers in his truck bed. This was a woman now. A mother. A life he hadn't been part of. He watched as she knelt to tie the shoelace of the smallest child, laughing softly, completely unaware of the wreckage she had just triggered inside him. She didn't look up. She didn't scan the room for him. She was living her life, whole, happy without him. James stayed rooted to the floor, feeling the crowd swell and swirl around him once more, feeling the moment to act slipping through his fingers like sand. One question repeated in his mind, louder than the music, louder than the applause trying to restart around him. Is it too late? Backstage, the gold-plated fantasy was already starting to crack. Celeste's heels clicked like gunshots on the marble floor as she stalked toward him, her smile as polished as ever, but her eyes hard and cutting. James could see it, the way she had noticed his hesitation. And she wasn't the kind of woman to let something like that slip past. "Is there a problem?" she asked sweetly, too sweetly, her voice carrying the subtle venom of someone used to winning. The cameras were still rolling somewhere beyond the velvet curtains. The guests were waiting, their glasses raised, their whispers growing louder by the second. James opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because what could he say? That the life he had been about to step into suddenly felt like a prison? That the woman he thought he needed had turned into a mirror reflecting everything he hated about himself? Celeste stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was almost a hiss. "Don't embarrass me, James," she said, all pretense of affection slipping away like a mask dropping to the floor. "You owe me. After everything we've built, everything I've built for you. The words slammed into him, cold and deliberate. Not love. Not even partnership. A transaction. A business deal dressed up in diamonds and candlelight. And she wasn't finished. Celeste leaned in closer, her breath perfumed and poisonous. Think about the headlines, she whispered. Think about the investors. The board. Your precious public image. You walk away now and you lose everything. It was a threat, and a promise. James's gut twisted. He could already feel the noose tightening around his neck. For years he had been building this life, brick by brick, smile by smile, exactly the way they told him he should. The perfect woman. The perfect proposal. The perfect empire. And it all felt so wrong. Now, standing here in the glittering ruins of his own ambition, he realized. He wasn't building a life. He was burying himself. Across the ballroom, beyond the gauzy curtains, he could just barely make out Anna's silhouette as she knelt to tend to one of her children again. No flashbulbs. No scheming. No desperate need to win. Just love. Simple, messy, real. James's chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He had traded everything real for everything shiny, and he was about to sign the final contract that would lock him into a life he didn't even want. Celeste placed a hand on his arm, smiling that bright, venomous smile again. "Ready, darling?" she said, loud enough for a few nearby staff members to hear, just to make sure he remembered there were witnesses. No easy way out now. James swallowed hard. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to break free, consequences be damned. But the fear was there too, clawing at the inside of his ribs. Fear of losing everything he had worked for. Fear of becoming a cautionary tale whispered about overexpensive cocktails. He was trapped. And the worst part was, he had built the trap himself. James barely heard Celeste's sharp whisper in his ear anymore. Her words blurred into meaningless noise as something deep inside him cracked open. He stumbled away from the curtain toward a darkened hallway behind the ballroom, desperate for air, desperate for answers. The walls seemed to close in on him, the chandeliers above flickering like dying stars. And then, a voice behind him. Soft, familiar, painfully so. "James?" He turned. It wasn't Anna. It was Margot, the longtime family housekeeper. The woman who had once sneaked him extra cookies as a boy, who had held him when his world first started falling apart. Her eyes were filled with something he didn't recognize at first, guilt. "I saw you," she said quietly. "I saw how you looked at her." James's throat was dry. He could barely get the words out. "You know her?" Margot glanced around nervously, then pulled him deeper into the shadows. "What they did," she whispered, voice trembling. "Your parents. It wasn't right." The ground seemed to tilt beneath him. "What are you talking about?" "They didn't just send you away, James," she said, the words tumbling out now as if they had been waiting years to be spoken. "They sent Anna away too. They bought her family off. Paid them to move her across the country. Promised them a fresh start if they kept her away from you." James shook his head, refusing to believe it, needing not to believe it. But Margot pressed on, her voice cracking with urgency. "She was pregnant, James." The words hit like a gunshot. Pregnant. Anna had been pregnant. When he left. When he waited for her letters that never came. When he convinced himself she had forgotten him. His stomach heaved. He stumbled back a step, the blood draining from his face. "And no one told me?" he choked out. Margot's face crumpled. "They thought it would ruin your future. That she would ruin you. A beat. And she never touched a penny of what they offered. She raised those babies alone. She fought for them, James. Every single day. Babies. Not just a child, children. 3 kids. 3 beautiful children clinging to her hands in the ballroom, calling her mommy, with voices that rang in his ears like bells. Were they? Could they really be? The thought crashed into him with the force of a freight train. The timeline added up. The ages fit. The familiar shapes of their faces, even in the fleeting glimpse he caught. It wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his choices, his sacrifices, shattered at his feet. He hadn't lost Anna because she gave up on him. He had lost her because he had trusted the wrong people. Because he hadn't fought hard enough. James didn't remember deciding to move. His legs carried him forward like he was being pulled by a force older and stronger than reason. Through the glittering crowd, past the hollow laughter and clinking glasses, toward the only real thing in the room. Anna. She was crouched by her youngest, helping him fix the crooked bow tie he kept fiddling with, her touch tender, her smile tired but radiant. A real smile, not the cold, practiced one James had seen all night from the people who called themselves his peers. He stopped a few steps away, suddenly terrified. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she hated him? He had left. Even if he hadn't known the truth, he had still left. But before he could lose his nerve, she looked up, and their eyes locked. And just like that, the years between them melted away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the party faded into a low, meaningless hum. It was just him and her and the heavy, aching thing between them, everything they had lost. Anna? His voice broke around her name, rough and unfamiliar. She stood slowly, her hands trembling. The children crowded around her legs, glancing up at him with innocent curiosity. James? She whispered. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even cold. It was wounded, careful, fragile. Like touching an old scar and realizing it still hurt. He swallowed hard, struggling to find words big enough to bridge the gulf between them. I didn't know, he said, voice thick. I swear to you, Anna. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know about. His eyes flickered down to the children. About them. Tears welled in her eyes and she shook her head, biting her lip to keep it together. I tried to tell you, she said, voice cracking. I wrote letters. So many letters. They never got to you, did they? James shook his head, feeling sick. He had spent so many nights blaming her, hating her, missing her. And it had all been a lie crafted by the people he had trusted the most. They took everything from us, she said, a tear sliding down her cheek. But I had them. She glanced down at the children, who were now clutching her skirt, sensing the tension. They saved me. They're my whole world. Our whole world. The words burned on the tip of his tongue, but he didn't say them yet. He didn't have the right. Not yet. Instead, he dropped to one knee so he could look the kids in the eyes. 3 pairs of wide, cautious eyes stared back at him. Eyes that looked so heartbreakingly familiar. His mother's dark lashes. His father's stubborn chin. Little echoes of himself he had never known existed. A lump rose in his throat so hard it hurt to breathe. Are you? He began, voice barely a whisper. Anna nodded, wiping at her cheeks. They're yours, James. The world shifted under his feet again, but this time it wasn't crashing down. It was opening up. A new world. A real one. Messy and imperfect and full of scars. But his. James looked up at Anna, the dam breaking behind his eyes. I missed everything, he choked out. I missed everything. Anna reached out, her hand brushing his. A simple touch. A beginning. No, she said softly. You're here now. And for the first time in what felt like forever, James dared to believe she was right. James rose slowly to his feet, feeling like a man waking from a long, brutal dream. Anna stood before him, real and trembling, and the 3 children, his children, clung to her sides, blinking up at him with raw, unfiltered hope. Behind him, the music swelled as the host tapped the microphone, ready to summon him back into the hollow pageantry of the night. The ring in his pocket pressed against him, heavy with the weight of all the wrong choices he had been moments away from making. No, not anymore. Without another second's hesitation, James turned away from Anna, only for a moment, and strode back toward the main ballroom. The crowd buzzed, eager, oblivious. At the center, under a massive chandelier dripping with crystals, stood Celeste, the supermodel everyone wanted, the symbol of a life James had been taught to crave. She flashed him a dazzling smile, perfect and empty. She reached for his hand, already imagining the photo splashed across every magazine by morning. James stopped just short of her touch. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. Cameras lifted. Phones hovered, ready to capture the moment. James took a deep breath. And then he spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice cutting clean through the noise. I have an announcement. The room froze. The world froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Celeste's smile faltered for the first time. James turned slightly so he faced the audience, and the exit where Anna still stood, her hand over her mouth in shock. I came here tonight thinking I knew what mattered, he said, his voice growing stronger. Thinking I could find happiness by following a script someone else wrote for me. He shook his head, the words flowing faster now. But real love doesn't live in gold-plated rooms or magazine covers. He looked straight at Celeste, who was staring at him like he had grown a second head. It lives in the people you fight for. The people who fought for you when you didn't even know it. A gasp rippled through the audience. Celeste's face hardened, but James didn't care anymore. I won't be proposing tonight, he said simply. And I won't apologize for it. The crowd exploded into a frenzy of murmurs and flashes. James didn't stay to watch the chaos unfold. He turned his back on it all, the glamour, the cameras, the expectations, and walked away. Straight toward Anna. She was crying openly now, the children clutching her tighter, as if afraid the moment would slip away. But it wouldn't. Not this time. James dropped to his knees again, arms open wide. The children looked at their mother and she nodded through her tears. One by one they rushed into his embrace. Tiny arms wrapped around his neck. Small faces pressed into his shoulders. And James felt something break inside him, something old and bitter and aching, making room for something blindingly new. Real. Unpolished. Eternal. Anna knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around all of them at once. A tangle of tears and laughter and whispered promises that it was finally okay to hope again. James closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of his children's hair, feeling the steady warmth of Anna's hand in his. Everything he had ever wanted was right here. And no fortune on earth could have bought it. Not for all the billions in the world.